Hello, guys. Good morning from Costa Rica. Good afternoon if you're on the East Coast of the US or anywhere else over the East. This is another webinar from Costa Rican Vacations. I'm your host, Adam Baker. Thanks for joining us today. We've got a fun topic, so hopefully most of you are able to join. For those of you that have signed up, we're discussing how to get around Costa Rica. And I've got two of our top Costa Rican vacations travel experts with us to discuss the topic. Madeleine Higginson, how are you, Maddie?
I'm very good, thank you, Adam. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Thanks for joining us.
You're welcome. It's nice to be online with another Brit, always.
Yes, two Brits and Jennifer Floyd. How are you doing, Jennifer?
I'm doing great. How are you guys?
Good, thanks. I'm really happy to have you guys on. As ever, I'd like to, before we get started, understand a little bit about where you're located. So, Madeleine, where do we find you in Costa Rica today?
I live just outside Santana, which is a small country town in the Central Valley. So if I look out of my window, I can see Poas volcano. Slightly, little bit of cloud up there today, but yesterday we could see it exploding, so that was pretty extraordinary. Bit of smoke going up.
Yes.
But yeah, I'm up in the mountains.
Excellent. And we should let everybody know that Paras Volcano has been quite active for the last 2 or 3 months, but slowly emitting beautiful plumes of smoke. Nothing crazy dangerous. You can't
Nothing
visit
crazy
it close
dangerous.
by, but it's great to look at. And Jennifer, where do we find you?
So I don't have an exploding volcano, but I do have a dormant one. It's near the Platanar volcano. So
Uh-huh.
where like the Juan Castro Blanco National Park is, that's where I live. So about 40 minutes away from like the La Fortuna area.
Oh, fantastic. So yeah, you're up a little bit in the mountainous region, kind of northwest, I guess, from the center.
Yeah, I would definitely call it more of a cloud forest. Um, we definitely do have like quetzales here and we definitely do have like lines of like hiking walks and waterfalls as well. But it's a little bit it's a farther away from like towns. So you have more of like dairy farms and you don't really have like a lot of people. It's more like a family oriented place. But it's nice.
Lovely.
I like it.
It's a bit more in the campo outside, countryside. I also noticed I used to live in Monteverde, the cloud forest, maybe 20 years ago. A lot of the homes have the kind of wooden interiors that you have behind you. It's really beautiful.
Exactly. Yes, yes. Actually, this is my grandmother's house. Then she gave it to my mom, and now I'm living here. So we definitely had some culture here. It
Fantastic.
was made about like 45 years ago, 50 years ago.
Beautiful, beautiful. Hey, well, guys, thank you so much for joining us. As I mentioned today, the topic is how to get around Costa Rica. We have an awful lot to cover. And for those of you that are watching, we're going to get through what is it really like taking public transportation? How does that compare to renting a car? And we always love to offer private shuttle transfers for the real luxury high-end experience to enjoy the trip from A to B. There's also public shuttle services and, of course, domestic flights if you want to get around Costa Rica a lot quicker. We're going to discuss all of that over the next 45 minutes or so. And then at the end, as ever, we're going to have a questions and answers session as well, where you can get any travel related question to Costa Rica into Madeleine and Jennifer, and we will get to those at the end of the webinar. So please hit up the questions and answers tab below that you can find here in Zoom. I'm going to share with you guys a bunch of links as we go. I've got my trusty companion, Pablo, in the background, who's going to be helping me provide you with links for videos and web pages that may help some of the contents that we discussed today as well. So please don't forget to get your questions in so we can get to those later. And if you guys haven't already done so, subscribe to our newsletter on the website, subscribe to Facebook, Instagram, and even YouTube so you never miss one of our live monthly webinars. So why don't we get cracking? We got a lot to cover, as I mentioned, 5 great topics. Madeleine, how long have you been in Costa Rica now, yourself?
I've lived here for 11 years now. So
So
I
it,
came here 11 years ago, meaning to come for a year and a half and loved it so much we just stayed on.
Brilliant. So 11 years. When you first came to Costa Rica, how much did you interact with the public transport system?
Well, that's interesting because I live in the Central Valley, so there's obviously a lot of different buses and things going around, but usually I drive, to be honest. I'm a driver from the UK. I'm used to London driving, so I can drive around San Jose with absolutely no issues at all. However, my kids absolutely love to take the public bus. So every time they'd have a day off school, I'd say, "What do you want to do?" And they'd say, "Mum, we want to go on the bus to the Multi Plaza, which is our
Uh-huh.
local kind of shopping mall." So I have taken both, but primarily I drive.
Yeah. Well, how would you, Jennifer, how would you describe when a client asks you, and it doesn't happen often, right? Because we offer generally high-end experiences, lovely hotels, 3, 4, 5 stars, flying, rental cars. It's a good question. How safe are public buses? And I'm guessing you grew up much like myself when I first came to Costa Rica. I'm 20, I'm backpacking around. I would take the 5 hour bus or 6 hours from San Jose to the beach. How do you ask the question when somebody goes, should I take the bus? What are the pros and cons?
So honestly, I was talking about this with like a friend of mine the other day because she's coming down here and she's wanting to do like a more of a backpacking trip. Um, and I've only gotten on the bus twice, and I've had the worst experiences, but I've had other people that had like the best experiences. So like I really can't like I'll just go based on like what happened to me. They are affordable, so that's really great. So they're inexpensive. They are safe and reliable, but it's dependent. So like I had an experience where I was on a bus and I was heading to Jaco from where I live, which is Ciudad Quesada. And the bus got here, like we only left like 2 hours after like the scheduled time. And it ended up breaking down midway. So they had to call for another bus to come and pick all of us up and then head like back. And so instead of like taking like I would say like 2.5 hours, it ended up taking 5 hours. So it was quite long
Yeah.
and it was something that I was like, do I really want to do this again?
Yes.
But I've also had people that were like, oh, I had such a great experience coming out of San Jose and going to Jaco, and it was like on time. We got there really great. Like we were made like one stop, but it was something that we could like if we needed to go to the bathroom, we need to go at that time because we weren't able to make any other stops. And they had a really great experience. But personally, I just had the worst. So I was like, I don't think I'm gonna do this again.
I think that's happened to me. And when I first came to Costa Rica, I was traveling a lot for the first couple of years by bus, whether it was San Jose, the Cloud Forest, going to the beach. Your point, I think, is so valid that something that, in a car, you're probably saving an hour, maybe 30% faster, right? Because you're going in a car, you're not going really slowly. Public buses do take a long time. So they will add 1 or 2 hours to your journey, depending on how far you're going. They are really cheap, right? It's going to cost you maybe $15, 10, $15 to go on a 4 or 5 hour journey, as opposed to a slightly incremented price, which we're going to discuss later, whether you're taking a private shuttle, renting a car, or flying. But it will take an awful long time and you have no
Yeah.
freedom, right? There's very rarely AC that works on the larger national buses. A lot of the windows open. Give you an example, San Jose to the Caribbean side might be a 6, 7 hour bus journey, as opposed to driving in 4 or 5 hours or flying in 45 minutes. To give you an idea about those kind of the times.
Mm.
I think, Maddie, you make a really good point. Your kids like to go on the bus. If you're here locally with some of the bigger towns inside the Central Valley, a half an hour bus journey that costs you $1, maybe 50 cents equivalent, super easy, super safe, and very easy to get around. Obviously, if you're traveling around San Jose now, taxis, but more along the lines of Uber, make it super easy and safe just to get around and about when you're close by. But yeah, it's unfortunate the couple of times you've been, Jennifer, that you had a breakdown. I've done that as well, and it sucks. What can you do?
It's
Wait by the side of the road until they give you another bus that's come from another 2 hours away, right? Yeah, so again, you could do it if you're traveling around on maybe a smaller budget. I had a question some people ask us about schedules and bus times. I think you could probably do a Google search to find out, but in my experience, and I don't know if this is still the case, you can find times online. Some of the bigger routes, Jennifer, maybe you can correct me, are usually fixed. Ciudad Quesada, La Fortuna, the Cloud Forest, Monteverde to San Jose. 1 or 2, sometimes 3 a day on the hour, depending. But I know it can be quite flexible. They don't always leave exactly on time.
Yeah. They don't usually leave on time. They try to get like a minimum capacity. So like once they're at their minimum, then they can head off. Usually like for like schedules or times, usually what I would recommend is like maybe going there a day before and asking them like what would be like the schedule that you can kind of get.
Yeah.
Just because like they're locals and they see it every day. So they kind of let you know, like usually there's a bus that leaves around 6, but it ends up only really leaving around 6:30, 7 o'clock. So you can probably get here like around 6:15. Like usually those people will give you like the best type of recommendation.
Yeah.
So do it like a day earlier is the best. Or just having like a local call or having them kind of speak to them and seeing like what kind of like information that you can get. But the best I would say is going there a day early and just kind of getting like the most information that you can.
Yeah. And I do remember, if we do have any backpackers or young students watching, if you are going in the high season around Monteverde, Tamarindo, Jaco, Arenal, Volcano, La Fortuna town, sometimes there's only limited buses. So getting your trip back a day early or a couple of days early, if you can buy that bus seat in advance, that used to be a really helpful piece of information, just because some of those buses can fill up. If you've only got 2 routes or 2 buses going from the volcano on a certain day back to San Jose, you don't want to miss the bus. But hey, that's public transportation. We're not here to discuss that in detail. two things that come up a lot, right? When you're booking a vacation with us at Costa Rica Vacations, do I rent a car or do I take a private transfer? So Maddie, that's the big question. We're going to discuss a bit about both, but when you get that question, should I rent a car? Should I take a private transfer? How do you address it?
Well, I think the most important thing is to really understand, from our clients exactly the type of vacation they're looking for. Some people are super active families. They want to do lots of exploring on their own, as well as the excursions and the tours and the transfers that we can offer. But I'd say 90% of my clients normally choose the private transfers just because they're convenient, they're private. It takes the stress out of driving. You don't have to worry about any navigation, which can be tricky here in Costa Rica. And of course, you can actually relax and enjoy the journey rather than, looking out of potholes and cows and other things that might be on the road. And, face it, Costa Rica is a beautiful country. Who wants to be looking at the road and you can be looking at the scenery? So I really just explore with people what they're looking for. But 90% of my clients will book a private transfer through us.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. That I think sometimes it's underestimated how much a private transfer is similar to a tour, in that you get your private driver, usually bilingual, have a good level of English. They know the route from
Yeah.
A to B really well. So you get to
Yeah.
enjoy that, stop whenever you like, right? Most of the time, if you need a break, unlike the public buses we were discussing,
Exactly.
and see some highlights on the way. Jennifer, is there anything you would add to that when people ask you the same question?
Honestly, like I just think like Google Maps or like Waze can be super unreliable sometimes. They'll try to give you the best way, but they'll probably like do the like non-toll ways, and then you end up taking a little bit longer than you could. Is
Yeah.
like the only other thing that I would mention. Just having someone that's local that does these routes so often, is like such a plus because they know exactly where to go and how to avoid traffic, how to avoid like anything at all. So you get there even faster. One of my experiences is my first time ever going to Guanacaste. I put on Google Maps and I ended up going like, through, it's called the Monkey Trail. I'm pretty sure you've all heard of it, but it's basically
Yeah.
crossing a river. And my little car is way too little to be passing by any type of river during rainy season. So I ended up just going and doing it, but we ended up getting stuck and I had to get my friends to get out of the car and push the car out of it. So it's one of those things where like, this would have been great with someone that like knew their way around here.
That's yeah, that is such a good point. Even now, and you make a good point about the GPS navigation systems. Whether everybody has access to Google Maps, but also Waze, which is very popular with local drivers here in Costa Rica. Like you just said, I always prefer to compare them to see which route they're taking and which way I'm going to get there first. Because if they're not live, like the monkey trail in Guanacaste is great. Most of the time in the high season, it's available if there's no rain. But the moment it starts to rain, it very quickly becomes impassable. So then if the apps are not telling you, and then you're trying to get there and you've driven half an hour into this tiny road where you have to then turn around and come back, that's really, really annoying and a really good point. If you do have that, I guess it's just one less thing to stress about. That if you're not having to rent a car. Nonetheless, Madeleine, if you do want to rent a car, because you're more adventurous, maybe you're coming back for the second or third visit to Costa
Yeah.
Rica, you want to go off the beaten path a little bit, you want to explore. Is it safe, and how do you go about renting it? And the big question is, do I need a 4x4?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, I mean, first of all, it is safe to drive in Costa Rica. You don't need to really worry about, anyone stopping you or anything like that. But you do need to be aware of the road conditions. The conditions that you can expect in Europe and North America, they don't exist here in Costa Rica. We do have potholes. The signage is not as good. The safety markings are not as good. So you really do need to be careful. But if you're a confident driver and you've driven around the world, then you won't really have an issue. In terms of having a 4x4, it's not essential. I'd say you can probably get to 80% of the country probably just in a normal sedan or something. I don't have a 4x4. I have an electric car and I take it all over Costa Rica. I wouldn't probably go on many unmade up roads and gravel roads, so you do need to identify those. But most places, even up to Monteverde, which has got a pretty bad potholey road, I can take it to go very, very slowly and be careful.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, right? It depends exactly on what you want to do individually. If you're going to
Mm,
go off maybe to those smaller beaches, Santa Teresa, and you are going to explore, like where Jennifer said, the Monkey Trail or certain smaller roads,
yeah.
maybe spending the extra 20, 30, $40 or whatever it works out to be a day on the 4x4. I know that most of the options that we recommend do have it, just so you have the option. But it's a good point that most of the infrastructure around the country is now designed, like you said, Monteverde 20 years ago used to be really complicated, and you could get there in a normal car, but a 4x4 would be recommended. Now it's paved all the way.
Yes. I mean, 4x4 is still better because it just gives you, just a little bit more, what's the word? Security when you are going through the potholes and when you
Yeah.
are, potentially do reach a bit of gravel. I would recommend a 4x4, but it's not 100% essential.
Yeah, good point. Guys, I'm going to keep sharing a bunch of these links here. So there's a couple of pros and cons in renting the car. We've got a page on that. I would also how to get around if you are renting a car. Hopefully you guys find that super helpful. Before we finish up with the rental section, Jennifer, are there any hidden costs of renting a car? And how should you go about insurance? Do you need the third party, or is the basic coverage going to be enough?
I'm pretty sure that the basic coverage would be enough. Like during when you go ahead and book a rental, they'll give you an insurance like right off the bat. You can get an additional insurance, which would be like if there are any like crashes or anything like that, it'll like cover you even more. And then obviously you only have to really think about like your fuel, if you got like basically like any gas like type of additional fees. But I think that would be the only really other option. I've only rented a car like maybe once in my life,
Yeah,
so I'm not quite sure. But I
yeah,
remember that talking to my clients that did want to make like rentals, they did decide that they want to travel like from one part of the Costa Rica to another, and they wanted to go in a car rental just to have like their own flexibility. They did decide to do like the substitute, like the additional insurance that Adobe offers, which is our provider. Just in case, just to make sure that since they are traveling in a different country, they want to make sure that they were basically all secured while they were here. And they absolutely loved it. Like they love traveling here, like on by rental. But obviously this was their second time coming here. They already knew the roads, they
yeah.
already knew kind of like their way around. So they had a really great experience, and that was pretty much only the additional charges. Like they were just like, hey, like we decided that we're gonna go and get like the additional insurance with Adobe. And then the only other cost that we're all going to think about is like gas. And I was like, yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah. Yeah, really good points. I've rented a number of times when we used to travel around making videos for Frog TV, and Adobe is a really good trusted service provider. If you find smaller providers that we don't necessarily recommend or work with, then you should check what may be added to those providers. If you book with us, like you mentioned, Jennifer, usually the initial coverage is fine. I do have quite a funny story. 10 years ago, my dad came over for the first time. Madeleine, much like you, North England, used to driving around, but very safe driver. We got a large Montero 4x4, and it was actually at a period during the month of September back 10 years ago when there were a few protests in the country. They were blocking up a couple of roads. And I remember he'd actually asked for the third party coverage as well. It maybe turned out to be about $100 extra for around 4 or 5 days. But like, okay, you want to be completely covered. It's funny, and it was a good job that he did get that, because coming back from Guanacaste and the 4 hour journey down to San Jose, we were diverted to avoid a 7 hour queue into a cornfield where only 4x4s could go because there was a very large gully, like a small river, but it was quite deep. People would go ahead and check, can you get over the river? Is your 4x4 big enough? As it happened, a lot of people had 4x4s. There was a queue on both sides, and people were taking it one at a time, and they saved a very long journey. However, there were a few locals watching us go in down through this gully. He accelerated out, and they're like really worried, and I couldn't really tell what was going on. Anyway, we pulled the car up to a gas station. Five minutes later, he'd lost the whole front bumper going down into the river, and it was floating down the river, which is what they were looking at, and somehow gesticulating to us, but we couldn't see because we were just getting out. And we're like, oh dear, bugger, this really sucks. The front of the car's gone, brand new, nice Montero. We get back to the Adobe office, we drop it off, and we go, hey, look, okay, what's this going to cost? Like, oh no, don't worry, you've got third party coverage. Take the car, ciao. No issues at all. Front of the car gone. So, it depends entirely when you're traveling. If there is a lot of rain in the country, if you're planning on doing some off-roading, maybe think about the third party. We can obviously help you out with that CRV if you do book a vacation with us, right? But yeah, I do remember that story, thinking that's a big part of the car that's not there. But
Gosh,
there you
yeah.
go. No, and it wasn't an issue. It's like very money very well spent. So yeah,
Well, that's very stress-free because then you're like, oh yeah, well that's all done and good. Like we just kind of left the car
yeah,
and we were out of there. So
exactly.
that's good.
Really stress free, and that was booked through the agency. So yeah. Again, if you are booking with us, I know there isn't really any hidden costs. We include everything in the breakdown in the quote as well. So hopefully that gives you guys a bit of an idea about renting a car. But like Maddie, like you said, it is really safe to get around. And if you do want to explore in your own time, say you're coming back and you're in more of the countryside, having that freedom is really good. And like you said, Jennifer, just make sure your gas tank is full when you hand it back, so you don't have to pay potentially a surcharge on not having space in the gas tank if you've left it half full or something. Otherwise, they
Just
may charge you for that.
Just one thing on the gas, actually, Adam. It's quite important, I think, that
Yeah.
people coming from North America, I think gas here in Costa Rica is quite a lot more expensive than you can get in the US. So people are sometimes quite surprised,
Uh-huh.
when they actually go to fill up their tanks, how much gas costs. So something that you do need to budget for if you are going to rent a car.
Yeah, I imagine a lot of people might ask the cost of it. I can fill up my car at about 35,000 colones. That's about $70. And that's a Honda CRV, 4x4, but quite a small one. So it could vary depending on the model you have, anything from 60 to 80 or $90,
Yeah.
depending. And then you have to see, obviously, the model as to how far you get. I guess a quick question before leaving the rental car. Maddie, you mentioned you drive an electric car. For anybody interested, I don't know if you can rent electric or hybrid vehicles yet. But am I right in thinking that the popularity of charging stations are now really common throughout the country all over?
Yes, absolutely. I've never had a problem. And
Yeah,
most of the hotels we work with have charging stations too.
yeah,
So I can go from my house in Santana right up to Guanacaste to the Westin on one charge it up when I get there, and then drive
yeah.
back again. So it's very convenient.
Yeah, and I know that's becoming obviously more popular, very green, eco-friendly country, right?
Yeah,
That is Costa Rica. All sorts of deductibles
exactly.
if you're thinking about buying a car, you perhaps you live here as well. Really good stuff. Hey, good chat regarding rental cars. We have a couple of questions here. Laura G, thank you. We'll get to the question very shortly. Although we have kind of just addressed, do I need a 4x4 and is a regular car fine? Maybe you want a 4x4, but the regular car, as Madeleine said, can get you around. We have another couple of questions coming in from an anonymous attendee, which we will address everything in around 25 minutes or so. Please keep your questions coming in, and I will keep sharing you guys links as well. So let's discuss a little bit about the pros and cons of the private transfers. So obviously, Jennifer, with our vacations, we generally always include our private transfers first. You get picked up, you choose the time. You have a usually bilingual driver as well, speaking English. Are they worth it compared to a rental car? Sometimes they could be 200-300, occasionally $400 one way over spending the whole thing on a rental car. How do you address that question?
I personally love it. I've had clients that have like raved about it when they email me back after they come like home from their vacation. Just having someone there that is local, that knows like different restaurants, that knows places that you can stop by. There's a route that you can take from like Arenal to like Manuel Antonio that you stop by like a croc bridge. So they even like tell you about that because obviously if you're someone that's driving here, you don't really know the country, you kind of just pass through and you didn't really see anything. So just having these drivers, it's not always, you don't have like a talkative driver always. And obviously some people going on vacation would rather just sleep. But
Yeah,
depending on like what you want and what you're looking for, they're really great. And yeah, so you can definitely sleep like if you're looking to go from like one place to another, wake up and then you're already at your destination, or you can kind of like see and shop at different places to get that scenery. So it's kind of like the best of both worlds. You really don't have to do anything, think about anything, worry about anything, and then you're at your destination, then you can continue on.
you make such a good point at the start of that answer that when we read reviews sometimes from our clients and people say, what was some of the best experiences? So often will our
Yeah,
clients give us the first name of the driver that have taken them
yeah,
between maybe the volcano and the beach because
yeah.
they've had a beautiful 3-4 hour time, stopped on the way. You mentioned the Tarcoles Bridge if you want to see crocodiles between, San Jose or the volcano and Manuel Antonio, or they've stopped for fruit at Amazing Stand. Madeleine, is that the same kind of reception you get when suggesting private transfers?
Absolutely. I mean, I think I said before, 90% of my clients always take the private transfers, and
Yeah,
many of them do say that it's the best part of their trip in a lot of ways because they get to interact with the Costa Rican, they can learn about the country. And actually, if you're doing a 2 or 3 center vacation, maybe going to the volcano and a beach location, it's usually it's usually actually cheaper to use the private transfers than it is to rent a car.
yeah,
And unless you want to be like exploring every day as well as on top of your excursions, it's actually more convenient.
yeah.
So I think private transfers are a great option.
especially if you've also got kids and a family and you've got all this space, you've got loads of space for your luggage, you know, you can stop when you need to. And it's really worth pointing out that a lot of these, the actual, I think we don't really want to call them minivans, but they're like small busetas. They're really nice. The new Hyundai, sometimes Mercedes, very cool. The AC, USB charging ports.
Yeah.
Usually the drivers have got snacks or at least water as well. So they're kind of topped up. And I think you mentioned a good point, Jennifer. If you just want to sleep, the driver's not going to bother you, even if he wants to give you a tour guide of the experience, right? Or that you can engage as much as you like. I think that's a really, really good point. A question that does come up, and I don't know how many times you guys maybe have used shared transfer services, but in Costa Rica we have Interbus, Grey Lines. These are two brands that are really common, have been here for decades. They usually charge around $50 to $60 per person, and they usually leave once in the morning and once in the afternoon from most common destinations.
Yeah.
They're shared though. What is your experience? And Jennifer, have you used them to compare between private and shared?
I haven't used Interbus yet, but I've talked a lot about it with other colleagues, and they say it's a really great alternative, especially if you're like a solo traveler. So instead of just doing like a private transfer for just yourself, you can do like these Interbus. Obviously, you're gonna have like a smaller space for yourself. It's a little bit more like not on your own time. You're probably not gonna be doing like a lot of stops on the way. So it is a different experience, but honestly, like if you're looking for like a really great friendly budget, a little bit higher end than like public buses, but lesser than
Yeah,
private transfers, it's a really great middle option.
totally agree. Maddie, have you ever done this? I can speak from my own personal experience, but I thought I'd ask you.
I've never taken Interbus. No, I
So
mean I've heard it's very good,
yeah,
but it's
yeah.
obviously a lot less convenient, and you're a lot more restricted to the times and things. So
When we first started filming for Frog TV and doing a lot of videos, we would use the shuttle services to go all over the country
okay,
around
yeah,
2012, 2013, before we got into the habit of renting a car. And Jennifer, you make a really good point. If you are traveling as a solo traveler, you can book a lot of these online directly. You're fixed between the hours. So usually there's a morning pickup anytime between 7:30 and 8:30, depending on how many hotels the Interbus has to pick up, or the Grey Line.
yeah,
Most of the buses have up to like 10 to 12 people in the minivan. Again, AC, not particularly comfortable. The seats don't really recline and they are quite narrow. Generally, it's about 60, $70 max one way per person. You
yeah,
can book it everywhere, as opposed to maybe spending $250 on a shorter route with a private transfer. And then, yeah, you are limited to, as you say, the times that you're departing, but they go to most hotels and drop off directly. If you've got a 4 or 5 hour route, there is a break, a toilet stop, and you can get some lunch on the way. You may switch an Interbus. So if you're going to Guanacaste, you go halfway, you switch to another bus, the drivers take your luggage, and then you keep going. So it works really well, and I can see why it would make a lot of sense for one person. But that's also going to lead us on to the final section, which is domestic flights. So if you're willing to spend that potentially for a 5 hour journey, maybe you can spend very slightly more and fly. But yeah, I think you kind of nailed it. I think the private transfers are a really good way of getting around, because they are going to give you a different, unique cultural look and a local look at the country, and really get to know, as you mentioned as well, Madeleine, the drivers are very proud. They love their country. They know the routes. So if something happens en route, you can maybe trust the natural GPS of your driver, as opposed to you trying to figure it out when it's raining in the off season.
yeah. They even know where the sloths are along the route sometimes.
That's right.
They'll
And just
quite often
standing in the
stop off
road.
and say, "There's always a sloth in this tree here," and obviously
Hey,
the kids love that.
yeah. You can't put a price on those kind of experiences,
No,
can you?
no.
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys have covered it. I'm just reading that one of my other questions that came up, that sometimes we get asked, how much do airport transfers cost from San Jose or Liberia to popular destinations? Is there how do we summarize more or less, if you were coming into San Jose and you're doing the 3 hour trip to Manuel Antonio, is it between $300 and $400 for 1 to 5 people? Is that kind of accurate?
It's just under $300 for up to 8 people.
Oh wow,
For
there you
that.
go.
And if you need a larger transport, then it will be a little bit more.
And it goes
But
up.
yeah, if you have a large group, or even
Yeah.
a family of four, it's actually, pretty much the same as a shared transfer.
Or arguably cheaper. And then if you, like you mentioned about renting the car, say you're driving, but then you have to park the car for 3 days at the hotel, and you're not really
Exactly.
using the car because you're doing a bunch of tours. The car's just sitting there for $100 a day or whatever. That's yeah, really, really, really good point.
Exactly.
And if you're flying into Liberia and you're doing maybe the hour's journey to the coast, I'm guessing it's a little bit cheaper. What are we
I'd say
talking?
like under 200 from like up to 8 people.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, from Liberia again, we get, it could be half an hour, could be going down to Tamarindo, maybe the JW Marriott, maybe about an hour. But again, probably worth it. Very, very easy. Plus, you don't have to do the whole hassle of trying to find your rental car in the airport. The driver's
Exactly.
there, ready to go. Bob's your uncle,
They
as
have
we
your
call
little
him.
name on you on like a little display, like an iPad, and they'll pick you up
Yeah,
and they'll just bring you to your place.
yeah. Really good. Oh, fantastic. Guys, there's a link as well, private transfer versus rental car. So if you want to read a bit more about that, we've done a video a while ago on that. Don't forget, get your questions coming in. We would love to get them. And it can be anything related to your vacation, not necessarily transport, particular hotel you might be interested in. What's the weather like at the end of October? How busy does it really get in Christmas? Just ask away. We'll get straight back to you guys. Now, domestic flights in Costa Rica. So Costa Rica is a tiny country, but sometimes it takes an awful long time to drive 100 kilometers when on the map it looks like you should be there in an hour and it's actually 3. Or you're driving to the north from the center, it could be 4 or 5 hours. Madeleine, when people ask you about domestic flights, what are the pros and cons, and when do you suggest flying over taking a private transfer?
Sure. Well, obviously, the biggest issue here really is time and where the clients are going to go. So the most common routes that I will use for domestic flights will be when a client wants to end up somewhere like the Osa Peninsula in the far south and kind of fly back from the kind of Drake Bay or Puerto Jimenez area, because it's a 7-hour drive. So a really nice way to do it would be to take our private transfers all the way down through the country. Maybe you go to Arenal, Manuel Antonio, Dominical, end up in Yossa, and then fly back. That will save you a lot of time. And similarly, if you're going over to Tortuguero and you're in limited time, that's a great flight to take. It's 30 minutes compared to pretty much a whole day transferring
Yeah,
over there by
yeah,
van and boat.
yeah.
I mean, obviously, sometimes the journey is part of the fun, but if people have restricted time, and a lot of people do, then flying one way can be a really good option.
It looks like you were going to add something, Jenny.
No, so like I do 100% love flights. So I have like an adoptive niece. I'd like to call her my adopted niece. She lives in Golfito. So she lives near like the Drake, Osa Peninsula type of location. And she was talking to me the other day and she's like, Jen, I need to come visit you guys. But the bus ride, this is a public transport, is I'll leave around 2:30 and I'll be in San Jose at around 11:30 at night. Couldn't you pick me up at 11:30 at night? And I was like, no, you're not doing that. And I put her on like a domestic flight. So I put her on a Sansa flight. Her first time ever going on a domestic flight to in Costa Rica because she's native. They don't really do those types of things, I feel like. And she loved it. She took pictures of like the whale's tail. She was like, it was such an amazing experience. Like, I'm never traveling by bus again.
Yeah.
And she talked to her dad about it, and she was like, I'm never, ever, ever letting you put me on like a public transportation again. Like, I'm not doing that like 8, 9 hour bus ride. So I thought it was funny because it is something that it saves you so much time. And a lot of people just end up loving it. It's kind of like on its own, like an adventure. And just seeing like Costa Rica from up high is just amazing. So yeah, I 100% always recommend it, especially for these long travel times.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with both of you guys entirely. It's a really beautiful experience. I'd never flown on the small Cessna flights, where you can fit maybe 8 to 12 people depending on the route. And like you say, Jennifer, seeing the country that low down, you're usually flying at 10,000 feet. So you on a sunny day, you can see the terrain of where you're getting really quickly. Even doing
Yeah.
a short 25-minute journey from San Jose to Manuel Antonio, that's usually a 3-hour drive, flying into the local Quepos airstrip over the mountains is absolutely beautiful.
It's beautiful. Yeah.
Um, you can also fly into some incredible places. So you were mentioning Golfito and Drake Bay. The Golfito airstrip is right there in the mountains. The Drake Bay airstrip is literally in a cornfield, or a yucca field, which is a popular crop here. Arenal volcano is the same. I know sometimes people ask, how safe is it? We always recommend, depending on the time of year, flying in the morning, and most flights, either leave from 6, 7 a.m. and there's a variation, 2 or 3 flights a day to the early afternoon. But there are also afternoon flights from December to April common. It depends. Obviously, if you are in the green season and does see a lot of storms sometimes in the afternoon, they will only ever take off if the pilot knows that it's safe. Number one, always. And they're very, very flexible in the air as well. I had a flight once from San Jose to Liberia in the north. and it was really bad weather arriving. We tried to land in an adjacent airport in Tamarindo, couldn't do it. Tried to get to Liberia and turned around and went all the way back to San Jose. So although it was
Wow.
slightly frustrating being in the air for an extra hour, there was easily enough gas and they just avoided the storm. So, that was just one experience. All the other ones have always generally been really positive. And in terms of time saved, I mean, Madeleine, you hit the nail on the head in terms of getting to the Osa Peninsula, which is honestly all the way down to Golfito, Drake Bay, Puerto Hernández. That's like a 7-8 hour drive.
Yeah.
And just saving that time flying there and seeing the coastline, so beautiful. One thing I think you mentioned, Madeleine, which I wanted to remind myself to mention, is sometimes the experience of going there is in itself a great tour. Like Tortuguero, leaving San Jose, leaving early, doing the transfer halfway, going to the farm, then doing the canals to get to your destination. That experience is amazing, taking up a day or half a day. But then flying back or flying to your next destination just
Yes.
kind of speeds up that process, right?
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. And there's some popular routes that we do. So, for example, a lot of people who come to Costa Rica want to go to the Arenal volcano area and they want to go to Manuel Antonio. But the drive between those two areas, that can be kind of 4 or 5 hours, probably 4.5, 5.5 hours sometimes. So taking a flight can really save you a lot of time. We have a direct flight now. It's only 30 or 40 minutes. So
Yeah.
it's a huge time saver.
That's a really good segue to something I wanted to mention. So starting from early July, if you do book a vacation with Costa Rican Vacations, our parent company, Namu Travel, which you'll probably notice in our email addresses as our header, we're starting at Namu Airlines, where our own Costa Rican Vacations has specific charter flights between our most popular routes. Maddie just mentioned one of them, Arenal to the beach down in Manuel Antonio, San Jose to Arenal, San Jose, Manuel Antonio, where you can actually book the flight through us. And you don't have to have the same check-in process of turning up an hour early before your domestic flight, getting on the flight. As we move so many guests traveling around the country, it makes sense to have more options for you guys to help improve your travel time, have a really, really smooth experience, and also bring the cost down. So if you are interested in planning and would like to get that experience of flying through Namu Air, as we're calling it at the moment, definitely ask your travel consultant, ask Jennifer, ask Madeleine if you're booking a vacation with those guys. Jennifer, a question that does come up is, what are some of the top domestic airlines? So who do we generally book and what's their names?
So Sansa, I think I mentioned it before, but Sansa is a really great option here. It is a domestic flight.
Yeah.
And they've pretty much fly anywhere that you need to, at least like the top tourist destinations. So you have like the Sansa flight from SJO to Arenal. You have it to Tamarindo, like the LIR airport. And then there's like a bunch of different airships that they can go. So like if you want to go to Santa Teresa, there's also another flight. And then anywhere and also you can as well go. So it's just really convenient because like you can pretty much get anywhere in Costa Rica if you are in either like SJO or the Liberia, which are probably like the bigger airports that you can probably kind of go anywhere. And then even like the airstrips, they tend to have some really great flight options. So like as well, like you have Arenal, Manuel Antonio, you have Arenal, Tamarindo. So there is some options there.
Yeah.
And just a huge time saver.
Yeah, for sure. Really, really good points. Yeah, and the connections always seem to be getting better between the different airstrips and not always having to go back to San Jose to go somewhere else and making those easier connections. Guys, if it helps, we do have a great article on domestic flights. If you want to learn more, I've just added it into our chat so everyone can see it. We have a couple more questions before we get to your questions. We also have a question that came in directly to us. Stan Miller, thanks, Stan, for your question. We'll address that. We've got a couple more anonymous attendees asking as well. So before we wrap up here, I'd like to get a summary from both of you. Generally, Madeleine, when it comes to the three different types of travelers, whether it's families, couples, solo travelers, is there one route you recommend for a specific group, or does it entirely depend on the individuals when they get in touch?
It depends on the group type, as you said, where they're going and how much time and budget they have. So, if you're a solo traveler, you want to see as much of Costa Rica as possible, you're on a limited budget, then a shared transfer is going to be the best option for you, almost certainly. Unless you're going to somewhere like Limon, Tortuguero, Osa, where actually you should look into domestic flights because they can be the same price as, very reasonably priced just for one person.
Yeah.
For families, unless you're the type of family that wants to be like exploring on your own every day, UK, I always recommend the shared transfers, because once you get more than two people, they're so reasonably priced. It's a great experience. You don't have to worry about a thing. And once you're in resort, you're enjoying the excursions or enjoying the hotel. So your rental car is just going to sit around not being used. So
Yeah.
the shared transfer, the private transfers are brilliant for that.
Excellent. Jennifer, when it comes to you, are you just flying everywhere now, or are you renting a car?
I have my own car, so I tend to go around by myself. But for like anyone kind of coming in, I would say the same thing as Madeleine. If you're a family, just like these private transfers are really great because you can pretty much sit back, relax, not really have to worry about anything, keep your kids in line without having to figure out how to drive while you're trying to figure out what your kids are doing behind. So that's really great. And then for couples, like depending on what you're wanting to do, like if you're a honeymoon couple, these private transfers are really great. But you can also do like a domestic flight because you'll save so much time and you can take advantage more of like the resort or the location that you're staying at. Because if you're a honeymoon, you're probably going to be on the resort a little bit longer. And then for solo travelers, like these, like the shared transfers are a really great option and we're now selling. So that's really amazing. And then for like domestic flights, if you're looking to save time and you have a little bit more of a budget, then I'll definitely recommend that to you as well. But it's kind of like sitting down, kind of talking to you, seeing what you're looking for, and then help decide based on what you're envisioning for your trip. So like each person is different and each travel style is different, but that would probably be like the main points, like based on like other clients that we've had.
Of course. Fantastic answers, guys. I mean, we've covered a lot of ground today. It's a big topic. It seems like a small country, but there are multiple ways of getting around. Hope you guys have found this helpful. If you are watching this post live webinar on YouTube and you have more questions for us, please do let us know in the description box below, and we'll, of course, get straight back to you with your questions. So as ever, we like to address some of the questions that have come in during the webinar. I got a couple of questions here in the Q&A, and I've actually got a direct question here. An anonymous attendee, Madeleine, was asking, are the drives too long for kids? I'm trying to figure out how to break up travel days so they're not exhausted.
I'd say on most of our itineraries, the maximum time you're going to be driving is probably going to be about 3.5 hours. I mean, a typical trip from Liberia to Arenal, back to the Guanacaste beaches and back to Liberia, the longest drive time is going to be 3.5 hours, which if you're taking a private transfer or if you're driving yourself, you're going to stop for lunch, you're going to stop off along the way. I think most kids could probably deal with that. I've got two kids myself. We travel all over Costa Rica all of the time, and we have a great time doing it. But yeah, 3.5 hours I think is perfectly manageable. Some of the really long trips, like I said, back from the OSA, I wouldn't really want to do that with my kids in one day. So I'd either fly or I'd take a break at one of the beaches around Manuel Antonio area on the way, or do something different, or stop off in Sierra de la Muerte or San Gerardo or somewhere like that, just to break up the journey. But all the other trips, pretty manageable.
Totally agree. I think that's a really good answer. I think it also depends on how you're planning your locations as to where you're driving and which travel days. I just took my daughter driving our car to Manuel Antonio, 3-hour drive. She's 2.5 in the back, not a problem. Momentarily on the tablet, and then there's a big forest, then there's crocodiles under a bridge, then you can hear monkeys, then there's scarlet macaws, then there's a beach. So that it also, looking outside at the view as well, it's pretty awesome. So it does fly by. We've got a question here from Stan, Jennifer, which is, will private transports have the requisite car seats for young children?
So what we do is like you'll let us know if you need it. We'll request it on our part. If there's any additional charges, we'll let you know. But most part, they do tend to if you let us know, we'll go ahead and request it for you before time. So like once you get to your private transfer, it'll already be in the car waiting for you.
Yeah, for sure. Great stuff. So yeah, Stan, if you're worried, just ask us and we'll make sure that that's already ready. And I believe that's the same for the rental car as well as a private shuttle service, right?
Yeah. So if you're renting a car, you just have to let us know.
Yeah.
I think that's like just really great communication, and then we'll go ahead and make sure everything's ready for you when you're in country.
Yeah. These are all transport related questions. You can ask anything, but we've got another anonymous question here, Madeleine. Do gas stations take credit cards, or should we always carry cash if we're driving ourselves?
Oh no, pretty much everywhere in Costa Rica takes credit cards, and it's quite a developed country. So, credit cards are going to be acceptable everywhere. Actually, filling up with gas in Costa Rica is such a pleasurable experience because you don't even have to get out of your car. I mean, coming from the UK, where you have to fill your own tank, Here in Costa Rica, someone will take care of you. They'll fill your tank, they'll wash your windscreen, they'll check your tire pressure, and you just sit in your car and pay by credit card. It's super easy.
Yes, and the checking your tire pressure and cleaning your windscreen, that's all free. That's just part of the service. So just ask them.
Exactly. If you want to tip them, great. But yeah, they'll just do whatever they want, whatever you want for you.
Fantastic. Well, that's some of the questions wrapped up. Guys, I have added Madeleine and Jennifer's information and email directly in the chat. So you'll also see that in the description box below if you're watching on YouTube. Guys, Jennifer, Madeleine, thank you so much for your time today. We've covered an awful lot. I'm ready to go on another adventure, whether I'm driving. I hopefully take my my small daughter on a domestic flight very soon. I'm looking forward to it. But thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. It's been really fun.
It's been really fun. Thanks, Adam.
Good stuff. So, guys, I hope you enjoyed that. As I say, if you have any follow-up questions, double check on the YouTube description box below. We will be back next month in July for another live webinar. So make sure you sign up and watch out for the next one. So for me and my guest, Madeleine and Jennifer, I'll see you guys next time. Hasta la próxima.